Number 1. The match. The United States men's national team beat Mexico 3-0 in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal. First, I'm going to mention the referee's name, El Salvadorian Ivan Barton, and I think he did a very good job. Some people may disagree, but he was the right man for this occasion, handled everything really well. We will mention it in a little bit. I just wanted to give him some shine first. Now let's get to the teams. Lineups and formations. Diego Coca got Mexico going in a 3-5-2. For the U.S., B.J. Callahan, the interim temporary till tomorrow manager, we don't know. I'm not really sure. Apparently Greg Burhalter's coming back. Anyway, he had the U.S. in a 4-2-3-1. Now, in the absence of Tyler Adams, it was just Weston McKennie and Yunus Musa in the middle, but this left space for Giovanni Reyna to come in and play the 10 spot. And this was a great opportunity for Folarin Balogun, the newcomer to the U.S. national team. And apparently the next great hope up top. In the first couple minutes, the U.S. did signify their intentions to use the wide areas. Timothy Weah getting in and crossing balls into the box twice, and then the next 15 to 20 minutes were just cagey. Neither side able to really get any control of the game. But big players are needed for these kinds of moments, and Christian Pulisic really stepped up. In the 21st minute, he did a very good job to get behind the Mexican defense, put a ball into the box. No one got on it, but that was a warning sign. Then he just kept looking sharper, faster, more technical, and he got behind the Mexican defense one more time, all the way around Memo Ochoa, and blazed his shot over the bar from like 8 yards out. It's a pretty bad miss, but Christian Pulisic was only going to be encouraged by how easily it was to get down that left-hand side, and Timothy Weah was having some joy down the right. Finally, in the 37th minute, the United States take the lead. It was initially good play by the United States. Gio Reyna trying to take a shot at the top of the box, he gets clipped, and then Mexico made a complete mess of it. Christian Pulisic jumps on the mistake and scores. It's kind of an ugly goal, and it's genuinely embarrassing for Mexico, but it's a gift the United States just had to take, and it put them in a great position to control the rest of the match. Now at halftime, if you're BJ Callahan, you're kind of saying, look, as you guys were, keep doing what you're doing, we're going to break through eventually, this is all working. They're not really causing us much danger, here are the things we need to keep in mind. The thing is, Mexico were not playing well. Individually, you weren't seeing anything that got you off your seat, and their passing was terrible. They just couldn't connect more than 3 or 4 passes in a row for a long period of time. And you're thinking Diego Coca's really laying into his guys and getting them really ready for the second half, because it took them a while to get back out to the field. The U.S. men were sort of standing there in a huddle while the other side was empty. Mexico took a long time to come out of the locker room. So you're expecting that if they had that kind of a halftime talk, they'd be ultra prepared? No. Instead, they concede 1 minute into the half. And here's the stupid thing. They actually started with the ball. They didn't seem to have a real plan for what they would do on their kickoff. The ball went back, then they went forward, they lose it. There's like a game of soccer header tennis going on in the midfield. And then the United States brought the ball down and passed it around. The ball cycled, it went all the way back to Matt Turner, and from him, 5 passes later, the United States tore down the field and scored. It's 2-0, and you really feel like it's game over at this point. Now, Mexico, they needed to react in some way, and there needed to be a real positive step in the way they played. You sort of saw a lack of talent, you saw a lack of organization, and a small lack of fire. The thing is, this needs to be directed in the right way, and that is not how Mexico handled it. I was taking notes of the game and wrote down, this is getting chippy. But the reality is the United States are more than well equipped to handle a fight. They are not some kind of pretty team that does not want to get their hands dirty. They're more than willing to do it. And I think Mexico assumed that the United States would fall apart if they just started getting aggressive. But it did not work out that way at all. Instead, Mexico devoured themselves. Things all really started to fall apart in the 68th minute when Cesar Montes won a ball, made a really good driving run through midfield, but was followed all the way by Folarin Balogun, who ended up stripping him of the ball. Cesar Montes, instead of just continuing to play, just whacks Balogun. It's a clear, obvious red card, and this is where I give credit to the referee. Ivan Barton runs right up. He's got no hesitation. The red card is out of his pocket, and he's like, you're gone. Problem is, the players did not really keep their cool. And this is where I criticize both sets of players. The United States is up 2-0. Yes, a player's just been kicked. You can protect him. You can get in the other guy's faces, sure. But in the end, Weston McKennie gets himself red carded for just getting involved. I will say, though, Weston McKennie delivered what is an iconic moment in the USA versus El Tri rivalry. By walking around with his shirt ripped and kissing the badge and getting drinks thrown at him from the crowd, he really did a lot to solidify and galvanize the US fans and the US team in that moment. Believe me, you'll be seeing this photo again for a long time. So it's 10 on 10, and unnecessarily so. And at this point, in a lot of ways, the tactics break down, because now there's just so much more space on the field. And it's a great time for individuals who like to run with the ball, like Sergiño Dest. Now, first of all, this is yet another poor turnover by Mexico. It's a long ball that does not need to be played. It's low percentage and it's poorly executed. Sergiño Dest takes it and goes on a tear. Basically rips through 4 Mexican defenders using both feet, including his final pass, which is with his left foot. And it's a very good ball through to Ricardo Pepi, who easily beats the offside trap, rounds Memo Ochoa, and scores. Huge goal for Ricardo Pepi. I'm sure this is a massive weight off his shoulders after having had a really difficult year and having missed the World Cup as well. At this point, the game is well and truly over. Mexico have no chance of coming back, but how can they handle themselves for the last 15 minutes? The answer, really poorly. Now, Sergiño Dest fighting in the corner for a ball with Edson Alvarez, and it just turns into a pushing match. Arteaga does push Dest in the face, and Dest decided to just slap him back. Both players deservedly red carded. Now, Dest shouldn't react to this. I get it. But he was pushed in the back twice, hit in the face. This is ridiculous from Arteaga. He should not be doing this. They're down 2-0, and he's going and getting in a fight. By the way, he was a substitute. He's come on and just made things worse for his own team. At this point of the match, the referee comes and gives a red card, and you see beer cups and water and stuff flying from the stands. Come on, people. Like, the game is turning into a dumb war. You don't have to make it worse. And the fans did. Really, after this moment, there was nothing really in the match that was interesting. And then we got the homophobic chant. And just a minute before the end of regulation, play had to stop for a couple minutes. Play was allowed to resume after a lot of Mexico fans started to leave the stadium, and there were 12 minutes of added on time. But by the time we got into the 97th minute, the referee just was like, done. And the final whistle was blown because the chant started happening again. I don't really know, but there's some Mexico fans here who probably felt like, screw it. We suck today. Let's end this game. This is not the look that they want, which brings me on to point number 2. This is a disgrace for Mexico. They haven't beaten the U.S. since 2019. They've lost in a Nations League final. They've lost in the Gold Cup. And they had a really wretched World Cup in which the United States actually did better. The sad thing is, you kind of wondered, what's the future looking like for Mexico? Where is the talent? Where is the spark? And on top of that, where is the organization to play as a team? Diego Coca in 6 games has really not made a good account of himself. He's won 2, drawn 3, and finally lost. But this loss was the most damaging thing that could have happened to him. And the reason why is because they were so badly outplayed. And then the discipline was just gone. A manager needs to be able to handle his team in those kinds of situations. The crazy thing about this rivalry is, once upon a time, it was the U.S. just trying to scratch at Mexico. Over time, the gap closed. But now, when you look at the United States, they look far better equipped for the next few years than Mexico. Number 3, the U.S. is looking good. Okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I know a lot of USA fans will, but the reality is the squad is good. There are some very solid players in here, and it is building. The starting 11 looks really strong, especially with the big players like Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, who did impress yesterday. And we also have the absence of Tyler Adams. Yunus Musa and Weston McKennie did a very good job to cover him. And then we have Fuller and Balogun. It was a debut. He was quiet, but he just needs to get going. You could tell he was the piece in this puzzle that is the newest and still needs time to get to know his teammates. So can the U.S. take this to the next level and win in the final? Point number 4. U.S. versus Canada. Now, I'm not going to get into a real preview of this game, but what I am going to say is Canada are going to be much better than Mexico. Not only do they have Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David and a few other good players, but they have John Herdman, who has been working with this group for years now, and they look very organized. Offensively, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. Defensively, they're tough, and they have a very specific plan. In comparison to the way Mexico played, that is going to be a much more difficult test for the U.S. The United States are able to blitz teams when they play poorly against them. If you turn the ball over to a team that wants to counterattack and has pace, they'll hurt you. But if you know how to mitigate the risks early and you know how to get under the other team's skin, you can cause some damage. And I think Canada are exactly the right outfit to push the U.S. a little bit further. Look, if Mexico are going to be this bad, someone has to challenge the United States and make them better. And Canada really do look like the side that is trying to take that second spot in CONCACAF, or first. So the United States will play Canada in this Nations League final. BJ Callahan with the chance to probably take a trophy in his 2 games in charge. And the reason why I say 2 games in charge sounds like Greg Burhalter is coming back. And that's number 5. Wow, huge news. It dropped right before the match. Basically, Greg was going to be reappointed as manager of U.S. national team. I have to say, this surprises me in a lot of ways. I don't really know how I feel about it. I'm not sure I really care. I know a lot of U.S. fans hate Greg Burhalter. They didn't like his style. They didn't like the way the team played. But the reality is, most fans of most countries are not really in approval of the national team manager until they actually win something big. When Gareth Southgate was appointed the manager of England, a lot of people went, "What? That guy? He's got no personality." But in the end, he's the one that completely changed the culture in the England team, and now players want to be a part of it. Whereas before him, a lot of players were like, "Nah, I'll retire early." It's also not necessary to have big names who are foreign managers. First of all, no team has ever won the World Cup with a foreign manager. That's one thing to keep in mind. And the other is, it's not always a big name that's going to make the difference. Take a look at Croatia. They've had Zlatko Dalic in charge for a long time now. In that time, they've made it to a World Cup final, a World Cup semifinal. They took third place in Qatar, all with a guy who basically had no resume. I think this appointment is actually fascinating because it really is going to be a test in how people bury the hatchet and move on from their disagreements. How is it going to work with Gio Reyna? How is it going to work with Ricardo Pepi, who was very, very vocal in saying, "I just hung up on Greg when he told me I wasn't part of the team"? I know to outsiders, this seems like a really bad decision. There's a lot of people who are not happy about it. But I think the players are the main reason why he's coming back. Here's a quote from Anthony Robinson. "A lot of people have touched on it. We all enjoyed the environment that Greg created. We all thought he was a good coach. Everyone could see the level of football that he had us play. And so there's no reason for me why they wouldn't have just tried to carry on with him. But unfortunately, that's not up to the players. It's up to U.S. Soccer as a federation. And I'm sure that they're going to do their best to find whoever they think is the best fit for this team. And that's the most important thing." Well, in the end, they went back to Greg Burhalter. So why might this work? In the previous cycle, he actually did build a unit and a very strong team that went to the World Cup and showed, I think, quite well. Most people got really stuck on the 3-1 loss to the Netherlands because they feel he got outcoached. Understandable. But if the players are behind it and they want this to keep going, why would the federation go against that? If players are motivated, happy, and hungry to be a part of the setup, there is no better thing for the culture. And if the manager is the reason they feel that things are so good, then you probably shouldn't change it. This is probably the most dominant victory the U.S. has had over Mexico in a meaningful match. The future looks bleak for Mexico, and it looks okay for the United States. We'll see if they can get past Canada on Sunday. I'm Sebastian North. This is Campfire Football. Have a good one.